Imagine a material so dense, so unforgiving, and so chemically stable that even modern diamond-tipped industrial saws scream as they attempt to bite into its crystalline structure. This is rose granite. It is the prehistoric armor of the earth. And yet, at the heart of the Aswan Quarry in Egypt, there is a planetary crime scene that defies every law of primitive engineering we have ever been taught. Here, in the shadow of a colossal 1,200-ton unfinished obelisk, the stone doesn't look as if it was pounded or chipped. It looks as if it was scooped, like soft wax under the heat of a divine thumb. We are taught that the pyramids and the massive monoliths were the result of endless grinding labor. We are told stories of copper chisels and stone balls. But the marks in Aswan whisper a different story. They speak of a mechanical ghost, a lost power that moved through solid rock with the grace of a surgeon's scalpel. Today, we are not looking at artifacts. We are conducting a forensic audit of a technology that wasn't supposed to exist for another 4,000 years. The moment you enter the Aswan Quarry, you are confronted by the cut that should not exist. It is a long, sweeping, concave groove carved directly into the rose-colored bedrock. It isn't irregular. It isn't the result of thousands of individual strikes. It is a perfectly consistent arc, repeated with the precision of a programmed machine. This is the scoop mark. To the eyes of an engineer, these marks are the signature of a high-energy tool moving with intent, applying a force that far exceeds the biological limit of a human arm. Right beside these grooves lies the unfinished obelisk, still locked in the planet's crust, a massive 1,000-ton witness to a job that was suddenly, and perhaps violently, abandoned. Conventional archaeology attempts to pacify our curiosity with a narrative of patience. The official explanation involves the use of Dolerite pounders, round, heavy stones used to hammer away at the granite grain by grain. It sounds reasonable in a textbook, but it collapses under the scrutiny of physics. Try it yourself. If you take a Dolerite ball and strike a granite block, you get dust, chips, and a bruised, uneven surface. You do not get smooth, bowl-shaped indentations with a uniform radius. Most disturbingly, these scoop marks descend into narrow trenches beneath the obelisk, spaces so tight that a human would be physically incapable of swinging a stone pounder. To create those marks from below, the tool would need to rotate, pivot, and apply lateral pressure. These are not the traits of a rock. These are the traits of a machine. The mathematical impossibility of the official timeline further shatters the myth of the copper chisel. Copper is a soft metal. It yields to the hardness of granite. To shape a 1,200-ton block using copper, you would need an endless logistics chain of smiths, sharpening stations, and millions of man-hours just to leave a scratch. Mainstream history suggests this monolith was finished in roughly 27 years. To achieve this, the builders would have had to set a multi-ton stone every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day, for nearly 3 decades. Patience does not bend the laws of thermodynamics. Motivation does not turn soft metal into a diamond-edged saw. Then there is the wooden wedge theory, the idea that dry wood was inserted into cracks and soaked with water to split the stone. Civil engineers who specialize in fracture mechanics have pointed out for decades that swelling wood creates chaotic, outward pressure. It produces jagged, unpredictable breaks. It does not and cannot produce the laser-straight parallel striations and polished faces we see at the site. The records we possess from ancient Egypt mention administrative costs and food rations, but they are strangely silent on the millions of broken tools and the centuries of labor such a project would have required. Something is missing, a massive, high-energy void in our history. If the tools we are told they used were insufficient, what truly shaped the ancient world? Alternative theories have begun to emerge, and they are as terrifying as they are brilliant. Some researchers point to abrasive grinding. Using quartz sand, crushed garnet or hematite slurry, a copper tube or a weighted drill could theoretically cut through granite. It is an elegant solution, but it fails to explain the speed. To achieve the crispness found in the Aswan cuts, you need more than a bow drill. You need torque. You need stability. You need a mechanical advantage that implies the use of pulleys, flywheels, and perhaps even animal-powered gear systems. Other investigators suggest thermal shock, the use of controlled fire followed by cold water to weaken the crystalline bonds of the stone. This might explain how large chunks were removed, but it leaves behind a brittle, fractured surface. It cannot explain the glass-smooth scooping and the parallel grooves that look as if they were shaved with a metal blade. This leads us to a more daring hypothesis, the rotating tool theory. Throughout Egypt, in places like Abu Rawash and Giza, we find stone cores, cylindrical samples removed from hard basalt and granite. These cores bear uniform spiral grooves, much like a screw thread. A hand-turned tool leaves uneven scars. Only a stabilized rotating bit moving at a constant feed rate produces a perfect spiral. The torque required to do this in solid granite is astronomical. It implies the existence of heavy-duty, fixed-trajectory machinery, ghosts of an industrial era we refuse to acknowledge. But the most shocking breakthrough has only recently begun to emerge from the cross-discipline study of material science and ancient stonework. Researchers are beginning to look at these scoop marks not as cuts, but as breakdown patterns. This is the hybrid synthesis theory. It suggests that the ancient Egyptians didn't just use one tool. They used a sophisticated chemical and physical process that softened the stone before the tool ever touched it. Recent residue analysis has found trace mineral deposits inside the quarry marks that are consistent with crushed quartz and thermal alteration. The emerging reconstruction is a masterpiece of ancient physics. The workers may have heated the surface of the granite just enough to create tension in the crystals. Then they applied a slurry of water mixed with an aggressive abrasive like corundum or emery. As the stone contracted from the cooling, the slurry infiltrated the microscopic fissures, effectively rotting the top layer of the granite. In this compromised state, even a relatively simple guided tool, perhaps a rotating head on a pivoting wooden arm, could scrape away the material in smooth, clean arcs. This model explains everything. It explains why the scoops are concave. It explains why they are so smooth. It explains how they reached underneath the blocks without room to swing a hammer. And most importantly, it explains the missing debris. If the stone was being scraped away in a softened state, it wouldn't leave behind massive piles of chips. It would leave behind a fine dust that could be easily swept or washed away by the Nile. In this light, the Dolerite pounders weren't the primary tools. They were the cleanup crew, used to crack off the remaining brittle layers once the heavy work was done. For centuries, the quarry walls of Aswan have sat under the Egyptian sun, hiding a brilliant, human, but nearly divine secret. The ancient engineers weren't primitive laborers. They were masters of the physical world. They didn't need magical machines or visitors from the stars. They used physics, chemistry, and mechanical intuition in a coordinated system that we are only now beginning to understand. They saw the code of the stone and learned how to rewrite it. These scoop marks are not just signs of ancient work. They are a message to us, a species obsessed with our own gadgets and our own perceived superiority. They are a warning that civilization isn't a straight line. Knowledge can be reached, mastered, and then lost, leaving only scars in the bedrock to tease those who come after. We look at the ruins of Egypt and see a tomb, but maybe we should be looking at them as a blueprint. If they were capable of this hybrid alchemy 4,000 years ago, what else were they doing that we are still too blind to see? We are scavengers standing in a workshop of giants, holding their tools and calling them rocks. The mystery of the Aswan scoops is finally softening, but the question of who we used to be remains as hard as the rose granite itself.